Learned about how to factor quadratic functions when you're A, and by that I mean this. Remember standard form quadratic functions, ax squared plus bx plus c. When your A is something other than 1. Well, when this happens, it's a very lengthy process. Here are the steps that you would need to follow to be able to do that. I would suggest either printing this page, taking a picture of this page, copying it down, pause this video if you need to write it down, something so that you have a list of the steps that you're going to follow. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through with 3 examples using these steps for how to factor a quadratic where your A is something other than 1. Okay, so I'm going to use that first example here. And so the first step says to multiply the coefficient of the first term by the third term, which is a constant. So here we have 4 times 15, which is 60. The second step says to find the factors of the resulting product from the first step. These factors need to be the sum or difference of the coefficient for the second term. So let me take that step by step. So first I'm going to list my factors of 60, which are 1 and 60, 2 and 30, 3 and 20, 4 and 15, 5 and 12, 6 and 10, and then that's it. But then when it says that these factors need to be the sum or difference of the coefficient of the second term, what that means here is this is positive. So that means either we're multiplying 2 numbers here, 2 numbers together to get 15 that are both positive or both negative. But what we also need to consider is that because of this plus sign here, we're going to be adding them. So we want the sum to be equal to 60. So I want to pick 2 numbers here that when I add them together, I get 16. Well, that's going to be 6 and 10. So these are the numbers. If I do plus 6 and plus 10, that gives me positive 16, and then positive 6 times positive 10 gives me the positive 60 that I'm looking for. So the third step says to rewrite the problem so that there are 4 terms. All right, so the first and last term will remain the same. So meaning my first term is going to be 4x squared. I got something plus something. And then my last term is going to be the same at 15. The second and third terms will be what you found in the second step with an x attached. So what I mean by that is you have a 6 and a 10 here. So this is going to be plus 6x and plus 10x. The fourth step says to put parentheses around the first and second terms and then around the third and fourth terms. You don't really need it necessarily around that positive sign. You could put it right here if you want, but it works the same either way. And so now we have 2 binomials. So that's what we've done. We've put parentheses around it. Now we have 2 binomials. All right, now this is the trickiest part of the whole thing, okay? Now we are going to pull out the greatest common factor of each of the binomials. So you have to pull out a factor even if it's 1. You have to pull something out. So looking at 4x squared and 6x, I see that 2x is the greatest common factor. 2x goes into both 4x squared and it goes into 6x. So here I'm going to say that 2x times 2x, that gives me 4x squared that I have here above. And then 2x times 3 is going to give me the 6x. So 2x times 2x gives me 4x squared, and 2x times 3 gives me 6x. So now I'm going to look at the second one, and now I'm talking about the 10x plus 15. And my common factor there is going to be 5. That's a positive 5, right? Let's see, 5 goes into 10x 2x times, and then 5 goes into 15 3 times. So 5 times 2x gives me 10x, and 5 times 3 gives me 15. It says once you do that, you should be left with the same thing inside each parentheses, and we are. We're left with 2x plus 3 inside each of the parentheses. So it says your final answer is the greatest common factor of each binomial combined times the binomial that was repeated and left in the parentheses. And it says although there's 2 of them, you're only going to write it down once. So what I mean by that is the final answer of each, the greatest common factor, so I've got the 2x plus 5, that means that's going to be this binomial right here, 2x plus 5. And then my other binomial is going to be 2x plus 3, and I'm only going to write it once. Even though we see it here twice, we're only going to write it one time. So this is the final answer. 2x plus 5 times 2x plus 3 gives us the 4x squared plus 16x plus 15. Okay, let me show you another one. So here we're going to do the exact same steps. My first term is 4, my last term is 2, so 4 times 2 is 8. And we're not worried about the negative sign, okay? So my factors of 8 are 1 and 8 and 2 and 4. Well, here what's tricky is because this is a negative sign, I know that I'm either multiplying a positive and a negative together or a negative and a positive. They're not the same sign. And then I also know that I want them to have a difference of 7 because of this plus 7y. Well, if I do a positive 8 and a minus 1, that gives me positive 7. So this tells me that I'm going to have, remember my first and my last term stay the same. And then in the middle, I'm going to have plus, oops, I might want to put that, well, let me do this. Minus 1, oops, minus 1x plus 8x, and then minus 2. So again, my first and my last term stayed the same, and then I used the minus 1x and plus 8x that I got from right here, okay? All right, now I'm going to put parentheses around the first and second terms, and then again around the third and fourth term. And I want to factor them out, or I want to pull out, I meant to put y's here, I'm sorry. I need to pull out the greatest common factor. So the greatest common factor for this first one is simply going to be y. And on the inside, that leaves me with 4y minus 1. Y times 4y is 4y squared, and y times negative 1 is negative y. So that works there. Then I am left with 8y minus 2. So I'm looking for a common factor here, and that's going to be 2. And so 2 times 4y gives me 8y, and then 2 times negative 1 gives me negative 2. All right, and then I should be left with the same thing. Once I pulled out the greatest common factor, I should be left with the same thing inside each parentheses, which I am. And so my final answer is going to be what I pulled out for the greatest common factors. That's going to be in one binomial, and then the other binomial is going to be what is repeated. And just to show you guys how it does work, this is our answer, but just to show you how it works, y times 4y is 4y squared, y times negative 1 is negative y, 2 times 4y is positive 8y, and then 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. When I combine like terms, I have this negative y plus 8y, so that gives me 4y squared plus 7y minus 2, which is, again, what we started with. Now, there is one time that things get a little bit tricky, and that's if you have a negative sign in the very front. So what you want to do is you want to pull the negative sign out, so that leaves me with 2x squared plus 15x plus 7. Because remember, if I were to distribute this negative sign throughout this problem, that would change those to negatives inside. So I pulled the negative sign out, and we're kind of, I mean, I hate to say it, but we're going to kind of just set that off to the side, okay? And now this is the problem that we're going to factor. So I'm going to start multiplying my first and last, and that gives me 14. My factors of 14 are 1 and 14, and then 2 and 7. But I want to get a sum of 15 here in the middle, so that tells me that I'm going to use positive 1 and positive 14. So I'm going to write it out, 2x squared plus x, or plus 1x, that helps you, plus 14x plus 7. My first and last stayed the same, and then I just kind of split 15x into 1x plus 4x. All right, now I'm going to put parentheses around my first and second, and then my third and fourth terms, and then I'm going to pull out the greatest common factor. My greatest common factor of 2x squared plus x is x, which leaves me with 2x plus 1, and I can check it. I get 2x squared plus x there, so I know I did that one right. And then here, between 14x and 7, my greatest common factor is 7. And so that's going to be 2x plus 1 here. So 7 times 2x is 14x. 7 times 1 is 7. So I was able to pull all that out there. So when I write this out, I pull out One binomial is what I pulled out, which my greatest common factor, which is x plus 7. And then my other one is going to be what I had repeated, which is 2x plus 1. Now, because of this negative sign that I told you to take out and set aside, I'm going to put this negative right here in the front back into my final answer.